I'm joined today by the Romanian analyst and author Calistrat Atudorei, who has kindly agreed to come on the long journey across the border to Moldova to be interviewed by me for UK Column. Calistrat, you're very welcome.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Now, we met a couple of months ago in September 2023 here in Chișinău, the capital of Romania, at the forum, Chișinău Forum, organized by our host today, Iurie Roșca. And it was a great pleasure to receive a copy of your book, America's Plans for World Hegemony, which we'll be discussing in a moment. But first of all, please tell us something about your background, your route to a PhD in political sciences, and how you became interested in the geopolitical questions that you now write about.
So, first of all, I have been outraged about the lies that are telling in media and about manipulation. And I started to study the truth, which is the truth beyond the news. And I wrote some articles, and then I consider it's useful to put these articles in a book. And this way appeared my first book in political science, America's Plans for World Hegemony. Then I wrote another one after 2 or 3 years, the transition of the international system from the unipolar order to the multipolar one.
Please show the audience that. It's only available in Romanian at the moment.
For the moment, yes. This is the first volume. And this is the second one.
And your first book, which we just mentioned, was first written in Romanian but has been translated and is in English.
Yes, America's Plans has been translated. Yeah, and indeed I took my PhD in political philosophy, political science, and now I am president of a non-alignment countries forum in Romania, member in Professional Journalist Union in Romania, and I'm a TV producer. I make TV shows with guests in this field of political analysis. Yeah.
How have you found it striking a dissident note in Romanian politics? Bucharest, the whole of Romania, seems to be an environment now where it is regarded as de rigueur to toe the line, to be a cheerleader for everything that NATO does. Your country hosts a whole battalion of Americans just on the Ukrainian border. Romania, together with Poland, is becoming a military giant in regional terms, certainly in aerial and air defense terms. And you are sounding a more pacifist and non-aligned note. Have you developed enmity with certain people as a result?
Well, we could say so, because some publishers, they did not want to publish my book, the first one. And of course, I have been attacked in media. They criticize me, but not very much, because I don't want to praise myself, but the book is so well documented that it's dangerous to criticize me, because I can show the proofs, the sources. And the sources are from documents, from different official statements, a lot of documents issued by governments. And it's pretty hard to say that something is not true there. They are not my opinion. It's political science.
I'm just flicking here through the sources in the appendices, and it is quite a lot of pages here at the end of the book. 70 pages of references with the full URLs to very high quality sources. The whole book is high quality, but the sources are to multilingual, original references,
especially
French,
from America.
German, and above all American sources.
Yes, because if I would give sources from Russia, they would say that I am Putinist, which I am not. But I criticize America for its plans of expansion to be the first pillar of the world, to be the hegemon. and the tools that they are using are not so correct, I would say. And this is why I highlighted some facts.
If we look at the chapters in this book, it's not actually your first book, we'll be discussing that later, but your first book in political terms. After an extensive introduction, you talk in the first chapter about the philosophical issue, which is if you're already a superpower, as the United States became in 1945, maybe even in 1918, why do you want to go that step further and become the hegemon, the undisputed boss, the king of the jungle? Yeah. Then you talk about the United States founding political principles, then the strategy for the Cold War and interventions during the Cold War in chapters 3 and 4. You then give a very fresh and thorough review of the Gladio phenomenon, NATO's secret armies in Europe of stay-behinds.
Very few known facts about this, but present even in the documents of European Union and of the governments.
It has been known in other books to refer to Gladio, but you, using the Swiss researcher Daniele Ganser and others, go deeper and say, what is it that the Italian and Belgian prime ministers admitted to their parliaments in the years around 1990, and where did their admissions stop short of the truth? So you go further.
I dedicated a whole chapter on this subject.
And in this particular chapter, I'm wondering how much role you saw for Britain, MI6, the Foreign Office, because obviously, as the title of your book suggests, you're concerned with America as a political entity, Washington as a force in the world. But the Gladio phenomenon, which was not limited only to Italy and Belgium by any means, seems to have been one in which Britain was an equal, if not arguably senior planning partner.
I would highlight the basic idea in this chapter. The Western Europe has been controlled during the Cold War through this kind of operations under false flag, and they, for instance, pretended, I mean, when I say they, I refer to the Americans and structures beyond states, transnational structures, secret societies like Masonry, Illuminati, and so on, Bilderberg. And they commanded this kind of attacks, and even their agents did it. They put the blame on the communists. And they say to the public, because they control media, look, what did the communists, so don't vote them.
In the case of Italy, the blame went to the Brigadi Rossi, the Red Brigades.
When they killed Aldo Moro, actually.
And a prime minister who was killed in my birth year, 1978, whose widow went on the witness stand in the inquest into his death and said, quite unashamedly, that American kingpins, up to Henry Kissinger, had menaced her and menaced her husband before his assassination, that if you allow communists into government, it will be the end of you.
Yeah, I would like to mention, because we are in this point, a quote from a document issued by European Union. So it's at page 86, just a second. Because otherwise we can, people could assume that this is a conspiracy theory or just some opinions. As you mentioned, the wife of that official, maybe he seemed to be, it was an imagination. But no, here we are, a document of the European Parliament. And I quote the first paragraph. Having regard to the revelation by several European governments of the existence for 40 years of a clandestine parallel intelligence and armed operations organization in several member states of the community. So, I will not continue, but this parallel intelligence service are connected with NATO and with United States. So it's not something hide and very hard to imagine. It's even the basic of the European hardcore structure, military structure and political. There were paramilitary a prolongance of NATO.
And people should perhaps not be too quick to dismiss resolutions of the European Parliament. They may think that it's a second-rate political organisation, but I think these days that claim is unfounded. Since it had its special committee on Gladio, it has taken the lead and gone further than the parliaments of its member states in its committees of inquiry on issues such as the Panama Papers and the Pegasus Israeli-based espionage software.
Yeah, but there are a lot of documents from government states, from Italy, Belgium, Great Britain, and I saw the photocopies. I mean, it's not an imagination, it's not conspiracy theory. These Gladio structures stay behind, they tell them in the beginning, really existed, and they were very effective.
For those who are unfamiliar with the idea, the 1960s thinking, and 1970s especially, was if the Soviets managed to push through the Fulda Gap and overwhelm us with conventional or even nuclear forces, we shall need a network of men who don't require to be commanded from London or Washington, who can act on the continent of Europe independently, but along the lines of principles which we will have given them beforehand.
Yeah. We could go deeper in this subject, but now I want to make an overview that actually this kind of operations, Gladio operations, are usual for the secret services because it's false flag operations, and they work with even with some terrorists. And in my book, I connected dots, and I explained later in the book that United States collaborated with organizations like Al Qaeda, ISIS, and they pretend, for instance, when they fought in Syria, and they continue to do it, that they fight against terrorists, against ISIS. But I showed in the book with sources, very high reliable sources, that they finance these so-called terrorists, these rebels. It's hard to make the distinction between the rebels and the ISIS terrorists. They founded these groups of soldiers, and they armed them, and they rescue when they are in difficulty. And when Russians intervened in Syria, they came with helicopters, I mean the Americans and even the British one, and they rescued the leaders of ISIS.
And your book has the quotations from people up to the level of Hillary Clinton, admitting that ISIS was strengthened and rescued by the collective West.
We get at a very important point here of analysis that these sources are open sources. Everybody can see on internet. If you make a very easy check, you find very, very fast. But still, people are not aware about this perspective. Why? Because they are subjected to a very strong psychological operation. Because when the system, through media, through politicians, keep repeating again and again a special narrative, this goes beyond the level of consciousness, of discernment, and goes in the underconscious, subconscious. And the public is like hypnotized, and they take this narrative as a fact.
So we've gone from military networks to psychological operations.
Indeed,
and this is one of your key discoveries, not just in the Gladio era, but more recently as well. Some people may dismiss you perhaps as a socialist, which I don't think you are, because you take an objection on principle to the US containing the Soviet Union in Europe and Asia, and Latin America and Africa during the Cold War. But the second half of the book, I shan't read the chapter headings, but from 8 onwards, you're talking about the unipolar moment of 1990 and what follows, and that is less controversial. The enemy there, constructed enemy of course, is Islamists who turn out to be funded from the West and from Israel, But that's your discovery, isn't it? That psychological operations in the media have taken the upper hand over kinetic operations.
Yes. Maybe after you finish presenting the chapters, because otherwise we will forget what we are talking about, I will explain this, the importance.
Very well. So we have plans to maintain unipolarity when America gained it after the fall of the Soviet Union, NATO expansion, 9/11 and the offensive in the Middle East, the United States versus the rest of the world, which is about America withdrawing from multilateral and global diplomatic conventions and arms bodies,
and not
arms
only
controls bodies. Then US economic warfare. This would be the territory that Ernst Wolf writes about and other such people. Confessions of an Economic Hitman is another such book. And then you take a case study, very contemporary at the time you wrote the book 4 years ago, that of Venezuela and the parachuting in of Juan Guaido in 2019.
Yeah, it was a coup d'etat.
And then your conclusions.
Yeah. And now, it's very proper to get to the previous question, the importance of this psyops. So people are controlled through this operation, psychological operations, and not from yesterday or the day after yesterday. It's from more than 100 years. And this is very much connected with understanding the mass psychology. Of course, the globalists have institutions to research this mass psychology, and they know exactly on what pedals to push to obtain an effect. For instance, when you point to emotions and when you keep repeating some syntagmas, some keywords, and you can obtain a kind of hypnosis, mass hypnosis. And the result is that people get, most of the people get in a state which is known in psychology as cognitive dissonance. That means that when a man or a group of people is brainwashed, they are not able to assess the truth, even if we make, I quote KGB agent Yuri Bezmenov, even if you make shower with information, you give them proofs, you give them videos, they will refuse to believe it, because they are set in a paradigm that this is not possible.
We have this idiom in English, he wouldn't know the truth if it jumped up and bit him on the nose. And you're describing how this state is induced in people.
Yeah, and we saw the results of this mass hypnosis, for instance, in after I wrote this book, in the pandemic. It is not a pandemic, it's a pandemic. And we saw that they applied day after day some psychological manipulations. It's very possible that a virus appeared and it's very dangerous, and maybe we could be saved by a vaccine. Bill Gates already invented the vaccine. Make this vaccine because it's highly effective and 90%, 99%. Maybe it's not so effective, 80%, 70, 30%. So they change the narrative after the people have been injected.
And this is what we call gaslighting, because the next stage is nonsense, you're dreaming. We never said it was 90% effective.
Yes. Now they say, it was a big rush. We didn't know what to do in this very special moment. We could not go on with the researches because people were dying, and we had to do something very fast. And the vaccine, we thought, is very good.
And to credit the European Parliament again, or some of its members, Rob Roos of the Netherlands managed to evince from a then director of Pfizer, she was fired soon afterwards, in a cross-questioning, no, we were moving at the speed of science. We never made claims that our product could prevent transmission.
Yeah. They were saying trust in science because the scientists are saying this and this. But other scientists, even Nobel laureate like Luc Montagnier, they said the opposite. Don't trust this vaccine. These are not actually vaccines. These are experimentally products. And the guy that invented the RNA test, and he died very, I forgot his name. But he said, don't trust this test because depends on resolution. You may detect everything in everything. I mean, depends how you use this RT-PCR test. And it was a huge manipulation. And I go back to this psychological operation. Everything is a psychological operation in the system, even the education system, how you manage the history, how you teach students in schools, in universities. For instance, I can tell you from my experience. I spoke with the rector in the Faculty of Philosophy, and I wanted to test him because I, of course, knew the truth. Professor, I heard that the Bolshevik Revolution was not actually done by Russians, but by some agents that were financed and trained in United States and in Germany and in Western Europe. And they killed the Russian elite, and they made actually a coup d'etat. And this professor, the chief of the faculty, said, well, I did not know this. I don't think it's true. No, it's not possible. So this is a huge manipulation. Of course he knew. But
Well, it was best documented by Anthony Sutton,
I know.
and you quote him extensively in this
Of
book.
course.
But Sutton had to leave his position at the Hoover Institute at Stanford as a result of writing the truth. However, it's unfeasible to believe that
There are a lot of
faculty directors in
convergent-
universities
Sure.
do not know of these books.
Absolutely. There are a lot of convergent proofs. In my book, I documented, I did not see anyone else do this, from the Archive of National Security of United States, documents. So it's not interpretation. I don't quote somebody else. I saw, of course, they are on internet, the images of some documents. For instance, some Western bankers sent letters to Russian revolutionaries, because they were not revolutions, they were terrorists, and they killed the Tsar family and the Tsar himself. And these monies were destined to help this Bolshevik revolution. So the help, the financial help, came from the Western bankers. It's
The two partnerships
proven.
in Manhattan which are most widely named in this regard in 1917 are Kuhn, Loeb and Company and Jacob Schiff. However, there are documents produced by inquiries of the United States House and Senate, congressional research papers, which schematized the findings from hearings from various committees, and they put N.M. Rothschild and Partners above these better-known names as the head of the house.
Sure. I can recommend a very good source I wrote in my book on this topic. It's a historian from Estonia, Juri Lina. So Yuri Lina, I don't know how you spell it.
Yuri Lina,
Yuri Lina.
Jurilina is his surname.
He wrote a book Under the Sign of Scorpio, and he made a movie, a documentary movie with the same title. And I appreciated very much how he documented this study.
I happen to be translating that from Swedish into English at the moment, and his other book is The Architecture of Deception.
And you know, here we can get to another level of approach, because we are not see only the involvement of some states, Germany, United States, Great Britain. Actually, it's much deeper. And Yuri Lina is talking about this. It's about secret societies because Lenin, Trotsky were members in Freemasonry, even in high degrees, 33 degrees of Masonry. And they executed some orders, gave on this line. Albert Pike, Giuseppe Mazzini is very well known. A letter that Albert Pike sent to Giuseppe Mazzini, of course, in 19th century, and or even 18th century. And they spoke about the future world wars, about the First World War, the Second one, and even the third one.
And you mentioned this lodge P2 or P2,
Propaganda 2.
which by universal consent has run Italian politics since at least the Second World War. Before them, you had the Carbonari, extensively in your book, America's Plans for World Hegemony.
Yes.
But you go a stage beyond many authors on this. You don't say that the buck stopped with the head of the lodge, Licio Gelli, who commanded Italian prime ministers and assassins. You say that P2 was acknowledged in the power circles to be an arm of American interest, which is back to the book's title again.
Yeah. Actually, in the final part of the book, at the conclusions, I told you the book was meant to be an ABC. So I started with some basic things to not shock the public from the beginning, but in the end, I went to some deeper level, and I spoke about these secret societies. And indeed, in a section of the conclusions called America Became the Armed Force of Globalists, I explained that the world is ruled by secret societies that are transnational. So the globalists are not necessarily anchored in United States or in Great Britain or somewhere else. They are everywhere, and they are coordinated within or through these secret societies. And they do not care about America or Italy or Great Britain or Romania. They care only to inflict, to establish a world government, a new world order, and to rule in a tyrannical mode.
And you suggest strongly that in our early modern era, we in Britain became host to this way of thinking, and that these forces induced Thomas Hobbes to write his revolutionary political philosophy entitled Leviathan, the beast that brooks no opposition. And you mention that right at the end of that last section of your conclusion,
Yes.
that dethroning Leviathan is now beginning to happen. And you write, nowadays, when the American globalist power is increasingly challenged, it seems that the neocons of the deep state have come to a great impasse. Either they accept peacefully the entry into a new era of multipolar relations, or they will play their last card of chance to achieve global hegemony. You then mention growing concern and opposition in the United States and the West to American hegemony.
I would like to highlight a very important idea that actually is completely dismissed. Is not people are not aware about this. In official statements and in when we learn international relations in university, we keep saying that the main actors, this is the term in the language of analysis, the main actors are states, which is not true. The main actor is this globalist actor, these transnational societies. They keep making the plans and to change the history from at least 200 years. They make coup d'etat, they make revolutions, they make wars,
the French Revolution was very much controlled by secret societies, and there is
Indeed.
a whole stable of French authors who have come across this now.
Their how do you say, front speech, liberté, fraternité, égalité, égalité, liberté, fraternité, or die. This is not mentioned, this final part.
I just happened to be sitting next to one of Yuri Eroshka's books, Les Guerres de Vendée, the war in the Vendée. All the conservatives and Roman Catholics in West Central France who wanted to continue a moral traditional life were bayoneted, thrown into the sea, unspeakable horrors.
You see, I think the role of the real analysts, which are us, for instance, I consider that we are the real analysts, to change the paradigm, to say the real history. And people need to know the real history, not the narrative which is delivered as a hypnosis to the masses, that the French Revolution was the first step to Illuminism, and the civilization started from there, and great poetries and writers. And no, they planned to get rid of kings and aristocrats and God, to make the society cut the connection with God.
Three things: class, religion, and private property. And in fact, the family, all four. And you can see this in Plato as well, but it resuscitates in the French Revolution.
They have protocols. I mean, these secret societies in Romania, and I think not only, are pretty known, the protocols of the Wise of Sion. And there are many documents, the protocols of Toronto, and they keep saying in a hide mode which are their plans, but because the power of the media is so strong and of the university obey to the system, people are not aware. They are keep staying in this cognitive dissonance, and we need to repeat again and again, like they do, but we have to repeat the real version of history to explain what is with the French Revolution, Bolshevik Revolution, 89 revolution in Romania, because it was another coup d'etat here, and a lot of Arab Spring revolutions, many others. And I wrote in my America's Plans.
One of the indications that secret societies were running gladio rather than states or agencies is the testimony given by one of the members of the Belgian stay-behinds, who are associated with horrible massacres, the one known in France as Les Turcs du Brabant, or in Dutch, the Bende van Nevel, which was shooting up a supermarket to create panic. They managed to interview for BBC Two Time Watch in 1992. You can easily find it on YouTube if you search for BBC Two Time Watch Gladio. Interview a man who had been a youth in that movement at the time, and he testified that membership and recruitment of this deniable Gladio organization was, as he put it in French, par parrainage. And this was mistranslated in the BBC subtitling, probably by accident, as far as I can judge. The subtitles were usually excellent in that era, but this was misheard and subtitled as "we were put in groups of the same age." But parrainage means by being sponsored. Mm-hmm. Somebody had to vouch for us, which is the operational model of a secret society.
Yes, amazing. So, about this book, America's Plans for World Hegemony, I want to highlight two more points, which I consider should be included in this new paradigm. I mean, to teach people the real version of history. And look, two examples, and they sustain our previous conversation about this psychological operation, because even these things are hide in plain sight, People are not aware about this. So the first of all is the principles, the basic principles of geopolitics. They were elaborated in the beginning, not the first one, but one of the first, Halford Mackinder. And he said about Heartland, about Rimland, about two powers, continental power, Atlantic power. And these are basic things. And when you understand this kind of principles, you suddenly understand what's happening in the world, because everything fits in these principles. For instance, why United States destroyed the Nord Stream pipelines? Because we are not naive, we know who destroyed it. Not Russians, not Ukrainians, United States. First of all, it was a collaboration of many secret services, but the leader were United States. Why? Because from more than 100 years, and here I quote Friedman. I wrote in my book. It is an analyst. I forgot his whole name, Friedman, and he said that from more than 100 years, we want to block the cooperation between Germany and Russia. I will tell George Friedman. He said in 2015, and one of these principles says in the formula of Halford Mackinder, who controls the Eastern Europe controls Heartland. Who controls Heartland controls the world. And what we can see in the Eastern Europe? We can see this intermario region between Baltic Sea and
the Adriatic and the Black Sea, the triangle between the three seas.
And it's Ukraine there, and Brzezinski and many other strategists of United States, which are actually members in these secret societies, Trilateral Commission.
Brzezinski is a very fine example because he's a Polish aristocrat, not an American by birth.
Exactly. And they wanted to, and they planned to use Ukraine as a pivot against Russia from decades. And we saw that they put in action this plan. So nothing is by happening, by chance. Everything is very well calculated, it's a very elaborated plan. And Romania too is in this intermario. And George Friedman gave a speech in almost private conference. I don't know, he spoke so freely that it's like he was a traitor of the plans of Masonry and American. And I quote a lot in my book, in this America's Plans, and he explained, we are very concerned about this possible cooperation between Russians and Germany. And if they are united using the Russian resources and know-how of the Germans, they can defeat us, the Americans. And that's why we have to broke this in every means, this collaboration. And many others. Something that is connected, and this is the second point that I want to highlight, very short, what General Wesley Clark said. General Wesley Clark was the supreme leader of NATO in Europe during the war in Yugoslavia. And he gave some speeches in America, even on television, and he said, I went to Pentagon in 1991, and I found out that the Pentagon is planning to invade 7 countries in Middle East. And I asked why, which is the reason? And we don't know. And after 10 years, when the coup d'etat, a false flag attack on Twin Towers. Actually, it was 3 towers, number 7 also. After they made this false flag attack, blaming the Arabs, they had a reason to go in Middle East, and they started to invade those 7 countries that General Wesley Clark found out in 1991. It was Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, Syria, Lebanon, Somalia, and
Yemen.
And Yemen, exactly. And why? Because those countries are part in Rimland. Rimland is very important principle of geopolitical analysis.
This is the periphery of the heartland.
Yes.
And if you control that ring, then you can hem in Russia and deny it Ukraine and the warm water ports.
Exactly. So everything is a strategy, and about keeping the unipolarity. It was a very important analyst on Pentagon, Paul Wolfowitz, a very important strategist. And he said in 1991, we need to keep the American superpower to be the first and with no rivalry in the world. We cannot risk to permit the rise of something similar with the Soviet Union or other great power. We need to be the single superpower in the world. And these statements appeared in New York Times and in some newspapers, and they confirm this strategy to keep unipolarity, and they act exactly on behalf of these geopolitical principles.
And yet, despite Wolfowitz's aspirations, the unipolar moment has now passed.
Yes.
Hence your 2-volume book, which is a more honest version. You had to censor yourself to get your doctoral thesis, but it's a more honest and full version of your thesis. The title in Romanian is Tranziția sistemului internațional de la ordinea unipolară la cea multipolară, the transition of the international system from the unipolar order to the multipolar order.
Yes.
What year was this published?
It was published in 2022.
So very recent.
Well, yes. Actually, I think it's 1 year. The book has 1 year.
And have you, in the year since then, found any data points which make you revise your thesis, or are you still convinced that the multipolar order is now upon us or dawning?
No. The unipolar order is gone. And I can say that the second book in geopolitical analysis is a continuation of the first one, America's Plans for World Hegemony, because when I finished this book, America's Plans, it was in 2019, and the unipolarity was still on its role. I mean, the Russia started to be a superpower on military point of view, because maybe it's useful to explain a bit this international order. And the international order is considered by the number of superpowers. When you have one single superpower, you say that the international system is unipolar.
Because there is one magnetic pole to which all other interests are drawn.
There are some requirements. Because when you have a single superpower in a necessary mode, you don't have to have in an international system major powers, only medium powers. So it's a lack. It's a gap.
This is America's 20th century strategy against Britain, its ally.
Yes.
And Britain's strategy against Russia and the Soviet Union, at times its ally, is to make sure that by being close to them and by being the junior partner and the one that does more fighting and the one that loses out economically, these countries will never have navies that rival the US interest.
And this is convergent with what I said before with Paul Wolfowitz. They do not allow to have rivals. I mean, not a comparable competitor. The gap has to be so big that you have a superpower and then no major power and only medium powers.
So Britain in the 1890s, America since the 1950s, have a naval concept of a two-power superiority, that you can take on Germany and Russia, for example, at the same time and beat them both.
Yes. So things did not go as America wanted, because Russia get to the point to be a superpower on a military field, and starting with 2015, when they intervened in Syria, they blocked this expansion of United States in the Middle East, because let's not forget, Syria was on the list. It has to be conquered like it was Iraq, Libya, Afghanistan.
I remember interviewing our former ambassador in Damascus, Peter Ford, a very honest man, skeptical about our establishment, who voiced this. He said nobody should think that President al-Assad Jr. was a madman for taking the path he did around 2010, 2011, in responding to the provocations, because he knew jolly well from the WikiLeaks of cables that from 2006 onwards, the United States was saying, when we have subdued the Iraqis, Syria's next.
Of course. They wanted to kill Bashar al-Assad, the same with Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi. It was the same pattern.
I well remember the demonization of him in the press in 2011. How could this awful, terrible butcher be such a civilized and almost British man? And the chauvinism was such that it was held to be incongruent that he and his wife spoke civilized British English and had a medical understanding.
And they did the same with Milosevic, the president of Yugoslavia, because Yugoslavia was in a non-alignment movement. I told you I am the president of non-alignment movement in Romania.
And for our younger viewers, there was once a bloc of 77 countries during the Cold War, the NAM,
Yes.
the non-aligned movement.
Yes, indeed.
And Ceausescu was veering towards that in the end, wasn't he?
Yeah. And Yugoslavia was one of the founding members, and they was positioned in the middle between the sphere of influence of United States and the sphere of influence of Russia, and they wanted to be independent.
In the end, the Warsaw Pact and Comecon, in an economic sense, had lost the whole Balkans, hadn't they? Because between Tito, Ceausescu and Hoxha, there was no Balkan power that was reliably in the Soviet communist camp by the 1980s.
Yes, and as we all know, it was a coup d'etat in Yugoslavia. They used some paramilitary organizations, as I told you, with Gladio, in almost the same method. They organized a revolution, like in Ukraine in 2013-14, and they controlled the media and the public. And they keep saying that Milosevic is the new Hitler, the butcher of Balkan.
It's remarkable that you are able to pronounce his name correctly. None of our political and journalist class have ever bothered, even when putting him on trial in The Hague, to pronounce his name. They all say Milosevic. And at one point his defense team made a point of this. Can you please at least get his name right, Milosevic?
Milosevic, yes, it's easier for Romanians because we are speaking like this. We are related with.
But in a linguistic sense, it is what we call a tell. It's an indication that the man is not regarded as a human being.
Wow. I didn't know. However, we can see this pattern everywhere, and this is what they wanted to do the same with Bashar al-Assad. And I was telling about Russia. Russia became in 2015 a superpower on a military level. Because what is a superpower? A superpower is state which is much more powerful than all the others on three domains. First is political, then is economical, and then military.
In that order of priority?
Well, not necessary, because many times the military is the most important one. As you know, it's a famous quote, the war is a continuation of politics with other means. And,
Clausewitz.
Clausewitz. And when you finish the arguments in political and economic, then you go to the military.
Notably, as our Western bloc loses its supremacy, its hegemony, Russia is being criticized for this very propensity, innate though it is to the status of a superpower, of switching between exhausted political remedies and passing to war, and then back to diplomacy when the point has been pressed in warfare. We're told that this is uniquely dastardly and suspicious and underhanded and Russian, but it is in the Clausewitzian or the West Point model exactly the same.
Yes.
But we're not supposed to think that way anymore. We're not allowed to know that our Western planners would prefer to be in that position themselves.
Indeed. So I make a pretty short presentation on this. I will not go deeper. Russia became a superpower in this military field, and China became a superpower on economic. And in this way, the general tableau, the general picture of the world scene changed dramatically, because United States did not remain the single superpower. It appears two other superpowers, even not complete, but they keep growing with the other two domains. I mean, Russia is growing in economics and in political influence, and China is growing in the military and political, because economic they are.
So you foresee that in the end, China will catch up militarily with Russia and complete the trifecta, and Russia will catch up economically and complete the trifecta.
Indeed. They will become full superpowers, both of them, Russia and China.
What about the European Union, though, Calistrat?
European Union, in my opinion, and I heard many others' opinions from people that I respect, will dismantle. I mean, it will soon start a wave of sovereignism and nationalism, and they are desperated in European Union and even in America, because people, they don't support anymore these globalists.
Do you see then the current move, at the time we record this in November 2023, there has just been a shock majority vote in the European Parliament to revise the founding treaties of the European Union to allow qualified majority voting,
Yes,
which
they
has
want
to
to
be
prevent-
ratified by the Council of the EU, the interest of the member states at head of government level. But this is the last of the triad, which was first proposed back in 1984 at the Fontainebleau summit by François Mitterrand, resisted by Margaret Thatcher. He openly, she secretly, because her party bosses told her, no, you mustn't speak about it. And the three things that were mentioned were European military integration, which has happened,
Yes.
European monetary integration, which has happened, and the last of the bridges to be crossed, QMV, or the loss of the veto, which may happen in 2024 if the member states cave in.
Let's remember that when we, the member states of the European Union, signed the treaties, for instance, Lisbon Treaty, we signed as sovereign states.
That's the whole point of signing the treaty. The
Exactly.
supranational body is brought into being just as it happened before there was any concept of supranational organizations in international law. The member states or the sovereign executives bring an order into being by the treaty. They remain in control.
And by an insidious mode, step by step, European Union want to become a federation of states. I mean, to have a unique coordination, ruler, and the member states abolish their constitutions, national constitutions, and just execute orders from Brussels and...
But what is the situation now in Romanian society? You lament the unthinking shallow anglicization of your youth,
Americanization.
the draw of your talent to Washington and more particularly to Brussels and Western economies. So is there still enough animus in Romanian society and in bien-pensant Bucharest society to insist
Yes.
on Romanian sovereignty?
Still, we have animus, as you said, but if we want to have a perspective, I will point that after the negotiations in Malta in 1989, 2-3 December, the Soviet Union, actually it was dismantled almost in 1989, and we know that Gorbachev and then how is his name? The next after Gorbachev,
Yeltsin.
Boris Yeltsin. They were traitors of Soviet Union. Even Putin or some other leaders from Russia, they consider that Gorbachev and Boris Yeltsin were traitors because they collaborated so much with Americans, and they gave up the national interests of Soviet Union. And Gorbachev in 1989 offered the sphere of influence of Soviet Union to America, and then it was the series of coup d'etat in Eastern Europe, and the most bloody one was in Romania, more than 1,200 deaths, and since then everything is manipulated in Romania, even the judicial dossiers. We did not finish the case of this coup d'etat. Actually, they call it revolution. It wasn't a revolution. It was a coup d'etat.
I became aware very quickly in the 1990s, although I was only just a teenager at the time, from Romanians that they claimed there had been a show of a revolution.
Yes.
Ion Iliescu's people had included many who had served under Ceausescu, who may be loyal to other interests besides the national interest of Romania. In contrast to the other heavyweights of Central Europe, Hungary and Poland, you didn't have a period of lustration, that is, screening people for their loyalties. Whereas Viktor Orban came to office rightly accusing the Gyurcsány regime of harbouring a lot of unreformed communists, and whereas the Warsaw Parliament held very strict hearings to throw people out of office who'd been communists, you in Romania were at the other end of the scale in this region, didn't you? You just allowed people to carry on.
I think Romania was a very important target for the globalists. And I keep repeating that it is not America who wanted us. It was this transnational Framasonic organizations that wanted to control completely Romania. And they succeeded almost 99%, I would say. And they started to use the so-called soft power, not hard power, which is worse and economic worse. Soft power means ideologic movements. And the first plane that arrived in Romania after coup d'etat, it was Soros. And he came with a lot of monies, millions and millions of dollars, and he organized the open society in Romania with the greatest intellectual in Romania, Liceanu, Patapievici, and many others, and they took the brains which could be corrupted in the Soros schools, and they put them in the leader position in Romanian society.
Do you then consider that George Soros had advanced knowledge of Ceausescu's downfall?
Yes, of course, because everything was part of a plan. Gorbachev announced Ceausescu a few months ago that we are probably not seeing anymore again.
We all remember his frightened stare on the balcony as he realized what he called a provocation was going on against him. So he was perhaps the last to know what was going to happen. He had fallen out, of course, with the Soviets, even in Brezhnev's time.
Yeah.
There was a famous incident where he came here to where we are, the former Soviet Republic of Moldova, when it was a Soviet republic, and spoke to the Moldovan people. And Brezhnev said to Ceausescu afterwards, "Do you see now that there is such a thing as a Moldovan nation?" And Ceausescu replied, "The trouble is, my dear fellow, I spoke to them in Romanian." Mm-hmm. And after that, of course, he parted company with the Soviet Union.
I think it's useful for your audience to know very briefly something about the involvement of secret societies of other countries in Romania. They started in the hard manner in 70s, 1970s. And it was mainly KGB. And they controlled the secret services of Romania. They managed to control. And in this way, they started to play a double game. The first game was with Ceausescu. They started to lie him that people loves you. They love you very much. You are the hero of the country, the best ever in history.
This was odd because he had only recently decried the personality cult of the Kim dynasty as unbecoming of a socialist country. And the next thing that happens is he is proclaimed as the genius of the Carpathians. So you see a KGB hand in this, do you?
Yes, because they organized manifestations with huge amount of people on stadiums and in the markets and places. And they all saying Ceausescu, PCR, stima noastră și mândria, all kind of things like this. And Ceausescu started to believe that people are really love him. And the second game, the second play was with the people. They started to tell people through radio posts, emissions, like Europa Liberă and Vocea Americii,
Radio Free Europe from Munich,
and Voice of America, and that all the Romanians were listening in the evening on secret because it was not allowed official. And these radio broadcasts are saying that Ceausescu is a megaloman and he want to gain more money and you are his slaves and he want to kill you. And people started to be extremely angry. And
so psychologically, in terms of the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations and the others like this is a strategy of tension, isn't it?
Indeed, very well pointed.
As Gladio is the classic example.
Exactly. You always can control masses if they are in frighten and in tension. And you have to point to enemy.
And on the last day of power in December 1989, Ceausescu himself was under tension in order to topple him.
Actually, I don't know which is your perception about Ceausescu, but even in those years, we saw him like a tyrann and we hated him, really. Now we realize that he was a patriot. Even he was maybe naive because let us not forget that Romania was the only country in the world who managed to pay all the debts to FMI.
The IMF.
And why? Because Romania took a loan from IMF, and the industry of Romania get a huge expansion, and we really built very important objectives for our industry and agriculture.
And Enver Hoxha in Albania famously said, "I will not take a penny from the IMF," and was criticized as impoverishing his own people and condemning them to use third-rate machinery.
And in 1984, IMF doubled the rate of the
interest.
And Ceausescu realized it's a trick, and he said, well, okay, if you play like this, we will pay you all the debt in advance.
Whereas your neighbours, the Hungarians under János Kádár, stayed in the deal, and then the IMF managed to wreck their economy during the transition.
Yeah. But it was a tool of control of the nation, because with this tool they can impose politics and the rhythm of the country. And Ceausescu was not pleased with this, and he broke the relations with Soviet Union, with IMF, and he attracted the outrage, the hate of the Western society, and they made a deal, I mean the Western with the Soviet Union, with KGB, and on December 89, many secret services from the foreign powers, they collaborated to overthrow Ceausescu.
Some comparable notes there to what happened with the Entente Cordiale in the 1900s, when the arch enemies, Britain and France, for the first time agreed to ally. And the purpose of the alliance was to crush the upstart Germany. And later on, the upstart Soviet Union got the same treatment. Until the very last moment, it seems that our elite and the Nazi elite were planning together to crush the Soviet Union until the tables turned. So we see how this game is played.
Indeed.
But Calistrat, we have to
Yes.
get into solutions at the end of this interview.
But let me first finish the answer with this situation with Romania, because I spoke about the past. Now I want to say a few words about the present. So now we are in the sphere of influence of the West, America, European Union, and unfortunately the young generation is brainwashed, and they are talking in English. They look only at the American movies, American music. In all the malls and shops in Romania, you can hear American music, which is on a very low quality. It's not art, it's trash music. I cannot call it music. And people in Romania don't learn the real history, the real art, the real culture of traditional Romania. They now started to learn about Holocaust, the history of Israel. They don't learn the history of Romania. I mean, mostly something else, but not the real, the deep history of Romania. Only lies. And in this way, you see the soft power of United States and the globalists managed to make Romania a colony. But the fight is not finished, because we are some journalists, some activists, some intellectuals that we are keep the flag up. So few journalists in Romania are keep sustaining the flag of nationalism and telling the truth, and people are awakening in masses, and it's part of the general current of awakening in the world and in Europe. A lot of sovereignists are coming. And I think next year at the elections we will have a lot of surprises.
Are you thinking of the European Parliament elections of 2024 or your national elections?
National. European Parliament is confiscated by the globalists. I mean, I don't expect surprises there in a positive point of view. And I want to give an example of the real understanding of history, and people are electrified. Myself, I did a show with a historian, and he is actually a multi-specialist in IT and in technology, in mathematics, and he explained that in the last 200 years, Romania was the main target of the Jews. They came in Romania to conquer this country, and they managed to have a proportion of more than 50% in many cities, especially in Moldavia, Romania, Moldavia, and Republic of Moldavia. And they get the control of the loyal of economics and immobiliar in everything that matters, in political. And the happy ending for us at the moment was that in 1948, when they established Israel, many of them left without prejudice. I mean, the Romanians did not kill Jews, and they did not harm them, but still they accuse Romanians that they did Holocaust. And now people understand in Romania, and this man that I spoke about, his name is Ivan Roșca, is a similarity of name with Yuri Roșca. They are not related, but just a similarity of name. He made an instrument which is called Fresca, and you can access through a matrix of information a lot of quotes about 1,000 authors. Many of them has been eradicated from Romanian culture, that they documented the invasion of Jews in Romania. And now we have the same situation. Romania is controlled mostly by Jews. And we have an opposition of party that are telling the truth, but we also have a control opposition, of course. It is a party called AUR.
AUR, which also is your word for gold.
Yes, and it is the acronym of Alliance for Union of Romanians. But only the title is nice, because the consistent of the party is pro-Israel, and people in Romania started to understand. And I hope and I think that at the next elections next year, the Romanians will choose strongly national orientation. Okay, and now I finished the situation of Romania, and I would like to say, if you agree, some things about a continuation of my books.
This I'm very keen to hear, because you already mentioned the word awakening, which suggests something psychological or spiritual going on. And I'm aware that before you wrote any geopolitical books, you wrote one about what we call, by acronym, UPARTs, out-of-place artifacts.
Yeah.
And I don't know how influenced you were by the book Forbidden Archaeology, which came out about 30 years ago.
Yeah, I read it.
What's the title of this first book?
The title of my first book is written, the title is The Forbidden History of Mankind. And I wrote it with a pseudonym, Marvin White. In Romania, the book is already famous, but they don't relate the content with myself.
So they assume it's a Romanian translation of a book written in English.
Yes, but actually I wrote it. But if we want to discuss about this, there is something else before. And what I want to underline is that when we analyze geopolitics, we can formulate different theories. That we go to multipolarity, maybe we go to the world government, and China and Russia are playing the same stage operation with the US and with globalists, with Freemasonry, Illuminati. This is an interpretation. The other one is with a real multipolarity. But I think for a general public, this is not so important. What is really important is what to do ourselves, each of us. because first thing you can notice when you make geopolitics is to understand the existence of this globalist actor, and the main activity of this globalist actor is manipulation, psychological operation. And here comes a question. Why some people can be manipulated and some others, like ourselves, cannot? And the answer goes from mass psychology to spirituality. And in my opinion, the answer is like this. Common people can be manipulated because their level of consciousness is at ego, the false I. This level of consciousness is to make representations of reality through the mind. So you don't get a real contact with reality, you have only representations of reality, like a map.
Only perception.
Yeah, only perception. And the perceptions can be manipulated with suggestions. When you keep repeating Slava Ukraina, wear mask, go to vaccinate, and again, hundreds of times a day.
In Britain we had triplets: hands, face, space. Stay at home, protect the National Health Service, save lives. Triads.
Yeah. It's just a few examples, but there are a lot, and they use it all. And they keep using from, I told you, in my opinion, from 200 years. And people that are at the level of ego is like a computer. They can be programmed with suggestions, with key words. Actually, I mean, I refer even to the public. We saw movies like American Trans or some others with agents in sleeping. I mean, they did not know they are agents, but when somebody else come and tell few apparently incoherent words, something happens in the mind of the latent agent, and he awake.
And this is not fantasy anymore, because there have been so many
Mind
testimonies
control.
corroborated now that Satanist ritual abuse, as well as
Yes.
secret agencies, dissociative personality techniques rely upon this.
Yeah, and they work with psychotronic devices, and some children were kidnapped and programmed in laboratories, secret laboratories, and they erased the memory, and they keep these agents latent. But with some impulses like this, with some key words, they can be awakened and they can commit murders and some other horrible acts.
I believe that this was one of the things which was whistleblown about by your most famous defector, the head of the Securitate, Ion Mihai Pacepa,
Yes.
who defected during the Carter presidency, who is most famous for talking about the question of disinformation. The term wasn't known before his defection, but I believe he also talked about mind control agents.
Yeah, there is a book, America in Trance.
Do you mean The Transformation of America?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, by Cathy O'Brien.
Exactly.
And then the sequel is Access Denied for Reasons of National Security.
He wrote the book all together with an ex-CIA agent who saved her.
A benevolent kidnapper who managed to deprogram her in secret. Yes, indeed. And unlike some testimonies in this genre which tend towards the fanciful, this one is extremely consistent and well corroborated.
Kathleen was agent of presidents, United States
in
presidents.
the Reagan era. Yes.
And he was used not only as sex slave, but to transmit messages.
Yes.
And he had this capacity. If you gave her a book, and he is in a stage of trance, when he reads the book only once, he memorized perfectly, and then she can deliver the message entirely to another person without any possibility to be corrupt, the message, or stolen. or intercepted. And the situation is much wider and much dangerous than the existence of these agents, because it's at the level of the scale of masses.
This is why the notion is so vehemently attacked, and why so many people take pains to debunk the idea of Satanist ritual abuse or multiple personality disorder, because if that is believed at the extreme sharp end, that people can be so totally controlled in this way, then people will realize that in a softer, more generic way, the majority of the population is being suggested, is being made biddable. And we can't have, or the controllers can't have people thinking that that's a possibility.
I'm sure that most of our audience heard or saw the rituals made at the inauguration of CERN, of that tunnel in
the Gotthard Tunnel in Switzerland.
Yes, in Switzerland.
That's 2 examples in Switzerland,
where the globalists made rituals at the beginning of some Olympic Games, and the rituals had absolutely no connection with the sport and that games. It was actually predictive programming of masses through media.
We had a notable example in the 2012 London Olympics,
Exactly.
where there was a sick show of
With
dancing
COVID.
patients.
Yeah, they put seminals in the underconscious of the masses with what is about to come in 2019 with this pandemic. So when people are hypnotized, even if they don't realize, with some seeds that are put in their underconscious, subconscious, when things are happening by chance, apparently, they accept it because they were already programmed.
It's almost become a saying in American English, I've seen this movie before.
Yeah, and Hollywood, exactly this is what they are doing with pandemics and aliens and all kind of stuff. So, all this can happen, and people can be programmed when they are like computers, like machines, like programs of computer, and at the level of ego. But we can do something else, and we can go to a higher level of consciousness, which is called in some interpretation the awakening of the soul. What does it mean? Awakening of the souls means to have the connection with God, with the harmony of the universe. Because at the level of consciousness, and the science is telling us this, we are all connected. The consciousness is not just a product of our body. The consciousness is a matrix for the body. When we fix something in our consciousness, we can transform and heal the body.
A term which has become increasingly common in intelligent discourse now about the social phenomena is egregore. The idea that there is a mass consciousness.
It's connected with studies of Rupert Sheldrake about the theory of morphogenetics. And there are a lot of examples. I mention only one. For instance, 100 years ago, Kirlian, husband and wife, they made some experiments, and for instance, when they cut a leaf, a quarter of a leaf, and they photograph the aura, they notice that the aura is still entire, even if the leaf has a quarter off. Why the aura is entire? Because the aura works like a matrix. So the aura is not a product of the leaf activity, biological activity of the leaf, but otherwise the aura is like a matrix, and this is why the physical projection appears.
Who produces this matrix, if this theory is correct?
This matrix is connected with God. I mean, there are some archetypes, and Rupert Sheldrake spoke about this theory of morphogenetics. All the species has some information field, and this is why There are some famous experiments with the monkeys, the theory of 100 monkeys. I'm sure you know.
In English, we tend to refer to it as the 100th monkey.
Indeed. And with the mice, the information could cross the ocean. They made some experiments in Great Britain, and when they repeated the experiment in the United States, the mice is there, they already knew.
This one is better known than some of the others in this field.
Indeed. And it's the same with the people, with the humans. Because when enough group of people, enough amount of people understood a lesson, the message, the conclusion of the lesson is transmitted to all mankind. And the lesson we need to understand is this connection with God. And if we get to this level to awakening the soul, we have this direct connection with God. We cannot be manipulated. We have a light in our soul that vanish the dark. And the dark side can control us only if they keep us in fear and ignorance. And that's why they want to destroy the moral values of nations, the spirituality of nations, the cultural values, because all these are making the soul vibrate. And if we are dead inside, cold, and we have no emotion, high emotion, we can be very easily manipulated. But when we have a goal that transcends the existence of the matter, I say this in principle, I can give my life to this goal, to this objective, without hesitation, because I do it for God, I do it for a principle, for an idea. And this is very dangerous for the globalists, because they want us to live only in fear, only in material domain. What I'm going to eat tomorrow, what happens if they cut my account in the bank?
It is remarkable that in the Sermon on the Mount, the Lord Jesus Christ told his disciples not to worry beyond today.
Indeed. And we have a lot of affirmations that our Lord Jesus Christ told us, and they are enlightening for us. And we only have to deepen the meanings, and we will have a completely different perspective. So this is what I consider people has to make to have this jump for ego to soul. When we are at the level of consciousness of soul, we are in direct connection with God. We understand the purpose of our life, and we have no fear. When we live in ego, we are at stage, it is called to be like an atom. The existence is atomized. We are all separated. I'm an atom, you are an atom, everybody are atom. We are not connected. I only want to be good for myself. I'm not, I don't care about others, but if for me is good, well, I can watch TV and no problem.
Many commentators have called these two basic paradigms in the universe service to self and service to others.
Indeed. I would say in the end of our dialogue that if we go to this level of soul, we understand that nothing is happening by chance. Everything has a purpose and everything is coordinated by God.
We could even say predestined in some theologies.
Predestined, but we have free will. And God gave us the opportunity to choose. And I think this is the key within we can understand what's happening in the world. Because if we consider that now it's a battle between good, between God and evil and Satan, we don't understand too much. Actually, God is almighty. He knows everything. He can do everything. And if something that we consider is evil, is bad, is happening, is with the acceptance of God. But why? God accept this?
The problem of theodicy, why does God permit evil?
Yes, because evil has a role in the manifestation, and the role of evil is to test us, to make us, to give us an impulse. And when we fight with these problems, we transform ourselves. And I consider that humanity is at the end of a cycle, and this is what I wrote in my first book, The Forbidden History of Mankind, because, as you said, with parts outside uh, out of place artifacts, there were some objects, even big, huge objects like pyramids on the bottom of oceans. And
Yonaguni is a famous one.
yes, and they were constructed thousands of years, tens of thousands of years ago. And we can ask ourselves who built them. And they obviously had a very high knowledge, because our official history says that the humankind started 10,000 years ago with agriculture. People descend from the trees and they started hunting. But this does not fit with pyramids. Pyramids are amazing. We have no time now to discuss more about this. I visited pyramids, and it's a huge knowledge there. And the planet is filled with pyramids in all the continents, even in Antarctica, in the bottom of the seas, as I said. And it was a civilization before that built the pyramids with a purpose, and they were connected. And many others. The map of Piri Reis, which shows Antarctica before to be covered by huge kilometers of ice. And on the planet Earth, there were some other cycles of civilization. They disappeared because they were cycles of civilization, and now we get to the end of this cycle. Many spiritual traditions, not only the Christians, Apocalypse said this, but the Vedas, the Egyptian tradition, Sumerian, and many others, Maya tradition, you know, the calendar of Maya, 2012. We started another cycle. And the God permits all these transformations because now it is a selection of frequency, of vibration, to make the jump to the vibrational jump to another era.
I'm reminded in closing then of that warning in the Epistle of James in the New Testament, let no man say when he is tempted, I am being tempted by God, for each man is tempted and drawn away by his own lusts.
Yeah, we live like an exam. We are all supposed to an exam, a very difficult one, and we need to manifest our first understanding what's happening, to go beyond the ego in soul connection with God, to understand a new paradigm of the real history. And second, we need to manifest our intention. The power of intention is huge. It was measured by science. I mean, when we have an intention, especially in resonance, big groups of people, when we pray together, the prayer has a much bigger force than if we pray alone. And now humanity is subjected to examine, to a test. And not all the people are crossing the test. Who cannot position at upper level of vibration, of understanding, of consciousness, don't pass, unfortunately, the exam. Because all the planet, all the mankind has to go on a cosmic cycle to another era.
How notable that we began this interview discussing the unchallenged rule of one political force, and we ended up with the power of prayer and consciousness. Indeed. Calistrat Atudorei, it's been a great pleasure. I hope that people read your books, that more of them are translated into English. How can people find you online?
So my books are on Amazon, and if I have a site, geopolitica.ro, Geopolitica written with kappa. And
GEOPOLITIKA.RO.
yes, I have many articles written by me, even are not included in my books, some others, and they can find a lot of shows that TV shows that I done, and I have a Telegram channel, Calistrat Marvin Atudorei. They can find I'm almost hundreds of shows, TV shows that I made, and we are a group of patriots here in Romania, and we keep this flag of nationalism, and I'm sure we will win.
Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you too for invitation.